Greetings, kindred. We're going to continue in the book of Ezekiel today for our Bible study. This study was written by Pastor Lancelot Knight of the former King's Chapel. And I hope you're enjoying it. You might want to go back and listen to some of the previous studies if you haven't done so already. Also, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. And without further ado, let's get started. We are in the 27th chapter of Ezekiel. The last study we ended at verse 7, so today we're going to begin with verse 8. But first, let's listen to this little bit of introduction from Pastor Knight. Isn't this book of Ezekiel absolutely amazing? What we are really seeing is a picture of, i.e., watching in this 27th chapter of Ezekiel, is Satan's ship. His one world beast system, complete with the four hidden dynasties of false religion and corrupt politics and miseducation, all driven by economics, the trafficking and commercial merchandising of goods and services, i.e., money. We will find in the next chapter that it is by these same powers that Satan drew the nations in the world that then was, in his original love boat, which eventually caused the destruction of that first earth age. Does that mean then that we are also seeing a picture of how it was in the first earth age before its destruction, described in Genesis 1:2? Yes, we are. Let's pick up the description of Tyre's greatness as she is likened to a great commercial vessel which rides upon the seas, many nations and peoples. See Revelation 17, verse 15. Ezekiel 27, verse 8. The inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners. Thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee, were thy pilots. Zidon and Arvad, meaning fishermen and sea rovers, respectively, were Phoenicians, the best of the ancient mariners and helmsmen, or pilots. Verse 9. The ancients of Gebal, the wise men thereof, were in thee. Thy caulkers, all the ships of the sea with their mariners, were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. Tyre had the brightest and the smartest caulkers from Gebal, which means mountains and is symbolic of nations. Caulkers by profession are stoppers of chinks in a vessel. Hey, you need people to explain, patch up, cover up corruption, and educate or spin truth into lies, the people as to how it is that you say one thing and do another. So caulkers are needed to keep Satan's ship afloat. Quote, all the ships of the sea, i.e., the whole world, traded and bartered with Tyre. She enriched many kings of the earth, verse 33, who sent their vessels to her ports. And one had better believe she also trafficked in political favors with the kings of the earth. There's nothing new under the sun. Verse 10, they of Persia and of Lud and of Phut were in thine army, thy men of war. They hang the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. She had a multinational army, which gave her prestige and honor. It wouldn't be surprising to eventually find that they were paid for by the nations who supplied them, maybe through dues to some organization they set up. Well, that's how the UN forces are paid for today, right? Verse 11, the men of Arvad with thine army were upon thy walls round about, and the Gammadims were in thy towers. They hanged their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy perfect beauty. She was well guarded and had Gammadims, meaning her own men of daring, as her watchmen. Yes, it all looked so wonderful and beautiful, the perfect picture and type of Babylon the Great, peace and security and prosperity for all who trade with her. Who could want for more? Surely this is a good thing, isn't it? Only a deceived people who cannot see the political corruption, the economic enslavement, the miseducation, and the idolatry to the gods of gold and silver, and I might just add, idolatry to the false Messiah, would make such a statement. She's going to sink and it be no more, remember? Yahweh said so. Ezekiel 27, verse 12. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead. They traded in thy fairs. Ships from Spain and elsewhere brought riches and the finest metals to the commodities exchange in Tyre. Verse 13. Yavin, Tubal, and Meshech, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy market. These were the sons of Japheth, who traded in slaves and vessels of brass. The sons of Meshech later became the settlers of Muscovia, the Muscovites, better known today as Moscow. Verse 14. They of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. Togarmah, a brother of Ashkenaz and son of Gomer, was part of southern Russia and Armenia. Verse 15. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thine hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. In contrast to verses 13 and 14, Dedan means low country or coastlands. Here's how the Living Bible translates this verse. Merchants come to you from roads, and many coastlands are your captive markets, giving payment in ebony and ivory. Living Bible. Captive markets and fixed markets are the primary MOs of the Kenite trading system. And I just might add that word Kenite means the sons of Cain, or what are presently today your contemporary Jews, your Edomite Jews that mixed with the seed line of Cain. And of course, we know that Edomite, or Edom, was the Esau, the brother of Jacob. Ezekiel 27, verse 16. Syria was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of the wares of thy making. They occupied in the fairs with emeralds, purple, and broidered work, and fine linen, and coral, and agate. Again, the main thing to observe is that all the nations were involved in trade and commerce with Tyre. Even, you guessed it, Judah and the house of Israel. Next verse, 17. Judah and the land of Israel, they were thy merchants. They traded in thy market wheat of Minnith and Panag, and honey and oil and balm. Notice what it was that the peoples created to till the ground, Genesis 2, supplied to the controlled markets of Tyre. Wheat and farm goods. There's nothing new under the sun, is there? Who supplies the majority of the world's wheat today? Answer, the same peoples. Of course, it is traded in the fixed agricultural markets, which are controlled by little Tyrians of today. Verse 18. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wares of thy making, for the multitude of all riches, in the wine of Helbon and white wool. Even the oldest city known to history, according to Smith's Bible Dictionary, trafficked with Tyre. She brought the finest wine of the day from Helbron, a village about 10 miles north of Damascus, located in a wild and beautiful glen, which is clothed in vineyards. Today there are many ruins and marks of ancient wealth in Helbron. Trading with Tyre made her so. Ezekiel 27, verse 19. Dan also and Javan, going to and fro, occupied in thy fairs. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were in thy market. This verse should read, Southern Dan, going to and from Uzal, traded in your marketplaces. See note in Companion Bible. Verse 20. Dedan was thy merchant in precious clothes for chariots. Dedan supplied saddle clothes for horses and chariots. 21. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they occupied with thee in lambs and rams and goats, and these were thy merchants. Hey, they also had a Chicago livestock exchange right there in Tyre, and the princes of Kedar were the major suppliers of lambs and rams and goats. Ezekiel 27, verse 22. The merchants of Sheba and Ramah, they were thy merchants, they occupied in thy fairs with chief of all spices and with all precious stones and gold. There were fine jewelry outlets in the marketplace supplied by the best from Sheba and Ramah. Verse 23. Haran and Cana and Eden, the merchants of Sheba, Asher, and Chilmad, were thy merchants. And you thought the idea of going to one marketplace to buy all your goodies, such as a mall or Walmart, etc., was a new idea. How about shopping spree to the city of ancient Tyre? Verse 25. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou wast replenished and made very glorious in the midst of the seas. Those cargo ships kept on sailing back and forth, and the warehouses of Tyre were kept fully stocked. But Tyre, you have forgotten Yahweh Almighty in all your trafficking and corrupt dealings with merchants and kings, etc. We see you worship the Queen of Heaven, Ishtar, Easter, and you have drawn the nations of world into your one world system through the use or misuse of the 4 hidden dynasties. You are headed for troubled waters, pal. Ezekiel 27, verse 26. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind hath broken thee in the midst of the seas. The east wind is put here for the king from the east, Nebuchadnezzar, sent by the Ruach to break down Tyre in the midst of the seas or people. Verse 27. Thy riches and thy fairs, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and thy occupiers of merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, and in all thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the midst of the sea in the day of thy ruin. The whole unclean, corrupt worldwide trading system is coming down. Yes, this glamorous ship of Satan's is going to sink to the bottom of the ocean, never to rise again. The same fate awaits the corrupt one world system of today, known as Babylon the Great in the book of Revelation. She's soon coming down, too. Revelation 18, verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Tyre also became the habitation of devils, and the hold, even stronghold, of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Ezekiel 27, verse 28. The suburbs shake at the sound of the cry of thy pilots. The word suburbs used here is in reference to a ship, which Tyre is being likened to, and means the waves at her side shall lash out at her at the wailing of her helmsmen. Verse 29. And all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea, shall come down from their ships, they shall stand upon the land. Verse 30. And shall cause their voice to be heard against thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust upon their heads, and they shall wallow themselves in the ashes. Oh, poor babies. Verse 31. And they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee with bitterness of heart and bitter wailing. This is just like reading the downfall of Babylon the Great, that mighty city of the end time which Tyre is symbolic of. And since one is the type of the other, the following verses can be applied to either of Satan's systems, the one then or the one now. Revelation 18, verse 10. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Verse 11. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. Oh, poor babies. Verse 12. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, and of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk and scarlet, and all thine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of the most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble. I believe we covered most of all these items in Ezekiel 27, didn't we? Verse 13. And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. I'm going to pause here. Just let that sink in for a minute. Horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men, beasts. Okay. In Ezekiel 27, we were given the identity of the nations that supplied these goods and services. For example, the wheat came from our people, the house of Israel, remember? We are on board today trading with modern day Tyre, aren't we? Verse 14. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. Verse 15. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. Though we are reading this from the book of Revelation, this is exactly as it was also written and as it actually happened to ancient Tyre. We have therefore seen the future from seeing the past. Ezekiel 27, verse 32. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee and lament over thee, saying, What city is like Tyrus, like thee destroyed in the midst of the sea? O poor babies. Verse 33. When thy wares went forth out of the seas, thou filledst many people. Thou didst enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of thy riches and of thy merchandise. Tyre enriched the kings of the earth, all right, but remember, she didn't do it for nothing or out of the goodness of her evil heart. She was a whore, just like Babylon the Great. I like the way Revelation describes this enrichment of the kings of the earth. Revelation 18, verse 3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Yes, that describes Tyre all right. Ezekiel 27, verse 34. In the time when thou shalt be broken by the seas in the depths of the waters, thy merchandise and all thy company in the midst of thee shall fall. Watching the Titanic sink is nothing compared to watching the sinking of this ship, because the vacuum caused by the hole she creates as she goes down sucks the whole one world system down the drain with her. What an awesome sight to behold. Verse 35. All the inhabitants of the isles shall be astonished at thee, and their kings shall be sore afraid, and they shall be troubled in their countenance. Just like Revelation chapter 18, isn't it? Verse 36. The merchants among the people shall hiss at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. Gone forever, just like Babylon the Great will be. Verse 18, Revelation 18:21. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. Yes, there will be a lot of crybabies in the fall of Babylon. But what will we Christians do when we see Satan's one world system fall? Rejoice, of course. Okay, I'm going to stop here a minute because I've come to some new understandings as the things that Daniel saw that he was told not to reveal until the time of the end, but to close up the book. Well, guess what? I think we're at the time of the end right now, and that book is being opened. We're seeing things we hadn't previously seen. So bear with me a moment. Let me see if I can just summarize some of this real quick. Okay, Lance just said, and I quote, but what will we Christians do when we see Satan's one world system fall? Rejoice, of course. Okay, now, first of all, I want to say that if you look at Christianity in the world today, and believe me, I'm just summarizing, this is a really deep subject, and I've posted some other things on my various channels about this, that Christianity is actually being under control of Satan. That is, pagan practices have been introduced into the church, such as Easter, like Ishtar, rolling these fertility symbols, Easter eggs, and quick like a bunny fertility symbols, which is what the Babylonians practiced and the Israelites practiced when they were captured in Babylon. They held orgies in the groves, sexual orgies. In other words, they worship reproduction instead of creation. And that's what we have in our churches today. If anything, this is the false Messiah in all its glory, Christianity. And I might also mention that that word Christian, which refers to Jesus Christ, the word Christ actually means anointed of Zeus, and Jesus means the son of Zeus. So what we have happening here is the owners of the publishing companies, which tend to be your Kenite, Edomite, Mongol Jews, they control the publishing companies, and they actually, in our word, our sacred word, have taken out the name of Yahweh and of Yeshua and replaced it with words like God and Lord. And God means demon, by the way. I've documented that in Interpreter's Dictionary. And Lord actually means a title for Baal. So whenever you say Lord God, you're calling Yahweh a demon and giving him the title of Baal. And whenever you say Jesus Christ, you're calling Yeshua a son of Zeus. So anyway, I don't like to use the word Christian. I call us Israelites. We are Israel identity. Okay, I just had to throw that in there, and I hope you will do a little more research on that. Don't take my word for it, but check it out for yourselves and see if you don't come to a similar understanding. Okay, let's continue. The seventh trump signaling the day of the Yahweh and the day of vengeance will have sounded, and our Messiah will have returned to take over the crowns of the earth and rule with a rod of iron. So the crybabies will do Revelation 18, verse 19. And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. And Yahweh's servants will do verse 20. Okay, I'm going to stop here again because all these Christians that worship the Antichrist, those that practice Easter and even Christmas, because we know Christ wasn't born on December 25th. He was born during the Feast of Tabernacles. Not Christ, but Yahshua. All those Christians that observe Easter, Ishtar, and even Christmas, because we know Yeshua was not born on December 25th, but was born on the Feast of Tabernacles. Jesus Christ, however, the Christians think that he was born on December 25th. So is this not another entity, the false Messiah? Okay, let's continue. And Yahweh's servants will do verse 20. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for Yahweh hath avenged you on her own. Okay, that's a pretty serious statement right there. Yahweh is going to avenge even Christians. Not many of them are going to make it into the kingdom. They're going to say, Father, didn't we prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name? But he's going to say what? He's going to say, get behind me, I never knew you. Yes, it's only a small remnant that are going to make it into the kingdom, those who have not forsaken his name, as you'll find in the Church of Philadelphia. Only that small remnant is going to make it. Is that going to be you? Okay, this ends this section of Ezekiel and actually finishes his chapter. So next time we'll begin with chapter 28. Until then, I hope Yahweh richly blesses you.